Hello, friends. Oh, uh, oh, maybe I could fix that. Oh. Hello, friends, enemies, strangers, those in the bardo, and and all my kind mothers. Mhm. Have you ever wondered, wow, what's what's why does Tibetan Buddhism matter? Need to brush my teeth. Why does Indo-Tibetan Buddhism matter? Indo, as it comes from India. Why Indo-Tibetan? Mhm. Oh, I like to think of it this way. So, the Indian subcontinent was blessed with a situation where it had the rivers and it had the shores to go out and trade with other civilizations. Huh. Uh, and it had the mountains surrounding it, protecting it from Genghis Khan and his Mongols on horseback. So it came to be that the Indus Valley civilization was perhaps it is estimated to have been, if not the largest, one of the largest in population civilizations of ancient time, perhaps even of prehistory, as in after a point you start seeing evidence of writing, of literature. So before that evidence, you could call it prehistory, even though they may have been writing on paper, not really paper, palm leaves or whatever, material, media that would disintegrate over time. Okay, let's move forward. So India developed uh, Buddhism, and Buddhism wanted to reach as many people as it could. So it went over the mountains to China, to Tibet, and from China to Korea and to Japan, right? And in the other direction, it jumped over to the island of Sri Lanka or Ceylon. And in another direction, it went over to Burma. It went over to Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, Mahayana Buddhism went down to Vietnam. Oh, and it went into Indonesia. There's Sumatra, so on. And westwardly, it went to Afghanistan. Pakistan is still considered part of the Indian subcontinent. Mhm. But what about Iran? Maybe it went over to Iran. Maybe it went over to all the way to Greece, the Middle East, uh, Egypt. Maybe not so much because there was a competing uh, ancient civilization, perhaps you could say coagulated into the form of the Hellenic civilization. Mm. Uh, Eventually, there would be Alexander the Great pushing into India. So there was a mixture of Hellenic civilization and Indus civilization, Hindu civilization. And so there must have been contact with Hindu and Buddhist philosophy. There came a point when perhaps the Buddhists in India were were pressured by the Hindus. A counterforce, perhaps the Hindus themselves were influenced by Buddhists and chose a counterforce to Buddhism in the form of the Bhagavad Gita. Perhaps that was their answer to defeat Buddhism in India and get it out of here. Or there was a little bit of that. Eventually, Buddhism in India was kicked out of India, but very gradually, because there was still a lot of Buddhism in, well, not a lot, but enough Buddhism in India until let's say, the 13th century, that people from Tibet and China looked up to India, sort of like the Muslims around the world look up to Mecca, sort of like the Christians around the world look up to Jerusalem. Hmm. But they kept coming back to India in search of jewels of Buddhist philosophy. So people in Tibet came down to India, to the Buddhist universities, to try to obtain, to culturally appropriate Buddhist philosophy and culture and bring it to their people, to their culture. They were hungry for wisdom of that sort. Mhm. Is this still charging? Hmm. And it went dark. Uh-huh. Yeah. Anyway, well, let's turn this on. So I grabbed the book this morning and called A Cultural History of Tibet. And I opened it up to the first chapter. It's called hmm, Part One, The Early Kings. I didn't show you the title. I didn't give you time to read the title of the book, The Cultural History of Tibet by David Snell Grove and Hugh Richardson. And it's like that. And this is what I'm reading. So I will read to you. Part, why is it part one, the early kings? Well, then maybe we should read the table of contents. Oh, let's see. When did I get this book? The Cultural History of Tibet. Uh, 2015, maybe? Yeah. I ordered it 10 years ago. Hmm. So here is the table of contents. Hmm. Can you see? Well, let me do some magic here. Okay. Let me do some magic here. Let me flip it over. There we go. So, ah, let me turn on the light and go over the table of contents. I wonder. Okay, so there's only three parts to this book. There's the early kings, the Middle Ages, and the Yellow Hats. Mhm. So the early kings have to do with how the Tibetan kings wanted really bad to acquire Buddhist wisdom. They figured it would be good for their people and for themselves, perhaps because they saw India. They said, wow, look at the Indian culture, especially Buddhist. The Buddhists were eager to teach anyone that wanted to learn about Indian culture. And so they said, wow, this India is an awesome civilization. Let's take let's take them up. Let's learn about Buddhism because Buddhism is Indian culture. So if we learn Buddhism, we'll have Indian culture with us. We'll become wise and we'll prosper. So he took it on. Then chapters 4 through 6. That's part two. That's the Middle Ages. They start having monastic life in Tibet. But then there's Mongols, the Mongolian, the Mongolian Empire was taking over everything. It took over China and it went westward and it reached Russia. And it went southward from Russia and it took over whatever it found worthy. It had a, I guess it had a difficult time taking over Afghanistan, well, called the Gobi Desert. Not much there, but and maybe that protected India and Tibet a bit, but maybe they didn't want to take over and control with their people, Tibet, so they let Tibetans control themselves, but they still had like lordship over them. Maybe they struck a deal. They told the Tibetans, "Okay, we'll let you go on with your civilization as long as you teach us your Buddhism, your Indo-Tibetan Buddhism." And so Indo-Tibetan Buddhism was highly regarded by the Mongolians. Then, in part three of this book, will be the history of the Yellow Hats. There's the Geluk tradition, the Geluk. There's four main schools of Tibetan Buddhism. There's the Nyingma, the oldest, and then there's the Kagyu, and then there's the Sakya. Sakya, not Shakya, Sakya, right? Mm, Sakya, family kind of tradition. And now there's the Yellow Hats, the Geluk tradition with the Gelukpas, with Master J. Tsongkhapa as the founder. Hmm. Their rise to power is given in chapter 7. And Manchu overlordship. What was that about? And then into the 20th century. Wow. So let's look at let's look at the early kings. Start looking at that. What was about? So, what is Tibet physically? Tibet is renowned as the most remote as well as the most inaccessible country in the world. It is surrounded to the south, the west, and north by massive mountain ranges ranging from 6 to 8,000 meters above sea level along the Himalaya and the Karakoram, and from 5 to 7,000 meters along the Kunlun Range, and the general level of western and central Tibet is from 4 to 5,000 meters above sea level. And the whole country is traversed by subsidiary mountain ranges, with which reach up to 6,000 meters and more. The great mountainous area, as large as the whole of Scandinavia, is tilted towards the east, where it is drained by the Sangpo Brahmaputra River, which flows almost to the southern length of the country, and by Salween, the Mekong and the Yangtze rivers, which rise in the remote eastern parts of Tibet. They begin in the eastern parts of Tibet. So you could say that Tibet is not just the roof of the world, it's it's the hmm, you know where you have a big tank of water around the town or neighborhood. That big tank of water is a reservoir of water that's brought down to all the houses in the neighborhood, kind of thing. Well, it's mostly giving water to all of the Far East and yeah, East and South Asia. I would say like the Mekong River goes into Indonesia, right? It, I'm not sure that it goes through Vietnam, but it goes west of Vietnam. Cambodia, Laos, which all rise in the remote eastern parts of Tibet. Although there's no single well-defined mountain barrier to the east, the centers of Tibetan civilization were as much cut off from the rest of the world on this side as on the other side because of the vast distances to be traveled across uninhabited wastes in a whole series of subsidiary mountain ranges. Until the middle of the present century, the journey from Lhasa to Beijing normally took 8 months. Ah. Woo, 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 woo. So, what do you think? Hmm, There's my Tibetan prayer flags. I gotta fix. I got. Okay, so and there's my oh money pay me home, and there's my Vajra Yogini, and I think that's Chakrasambhara over there. And there's the Wisdom Buddha, Manjushri, Omara Patsanadi, Omara Patsanadi, Omara Patsanadi. So I will stop here because I got things to do. So what's the day? What's the day? August 22nd. Friday, August 22nd. Well, I got. I'm looking forward to my Zoom class at 1:30 p.m. at Mopadisha Shatakam. Verse. Oh, I don't remember what verse we're on. I guess it's on my email. When it was 30 something. Maybe it's in the 40s now. I don't know. Hmm. And at 4 p.m., I think I have a Gita class or something. I don't know. Maybe it's postponed. We'll see where we're at. We're still on it, I think. Because I don't think we reached chapter 18. Hmm. And then what else is happening later this evening? Oh, I think there's a satsang around 8, maybe 8:30 or 9. Not sure. And there might be some other things going on. That's online activities. And then tomorrow morning, I have wake up and think clearly around 7ish. And what else is going on? Mhm. Let's see. I'm thinking of because I got a belly, mm, belly fat. I'm thinking of going to the tennis center, San Lando. Maybe I could go to Sylvan. I don't know. I think the wall in San Lando is much better. Hmm. And I will strike the ball against the wall. Maybe I'll see my friend Robert. Robert, what's his last name? I don't know. Let's see. Uh, or maybe I'll find what's his name? Juan. Maybe I'm starting to have Alzheimer's. No, Alzheimer's. Dementia. Yeah. Hmm. What's his last name? Rob. Uh, who, the last name of Juan. Juan. Uh, it's the name. It's the last name of a famous. Maybe it's a dictator, Central American dictator. What else? I have so many things to do. Do my passport. See if I can get that going. And yeah, start a website. Several websites. Oh yes, I have a domain name. Wake up and think clearly.org. I need to put it on there at our Vixie. So, oh, and I'm thinking of putting a television there. Maybe it's there. Hmm. Or, hmm. Right, right, right. Hmm. Yeah. So, see, see. Okay, that was my sister asking if I'm going to the office, and I said yes. And she said, "Okay, get up. I got you some food in a container for you to take." Something like that. I heard. Mm-hmm. So, hmm. So that was the a cultural history of Tibet, and it's a good introduction to Indo-Tibetan Buddhism. Mhm. I got some books on Tibetan Buddhism. Let's see, what other books do I have that might cover Indo-Tibetan Buddhism? Probably this one, and this one, and this one, and this one a little bit, and this one, Tibetan Buddhism, Shinrei Project, and this one maybe a little bit, Magic and Mystery in Tibet by David Neal, Alexandra David Neal. This one, a general Buddhism book, Saints and the Sadhus and Saints of Nepal, maybe a little bit. This one, Inner Science of Buddhist Practice. That's kind of like the Lam Rim. The Bull of a Man, that's interesting. Side note. The Search for the Buddha, that's interesting. The Cult of Tara, Feminist Mind. The Tantric Distinction. Oh, thinking of thinking of hanging this like this. Maybe. And hanging things from there. Or maybe, hmm, or maybe there. Oh, mhm, mhm. There's Geshe Kelsang Gyatso books. There's a Diamond Rosary. It's a good kind of a sadhana. Medicine Buddha. Yeah. Hmm. I might take a look of Bhutan's history of Buddhism in India and its spread to Tibet. That's by someone that was a historian of Buddhism in Tibet, an actual Tibetan. So it's from their point of view. So it might have a few exaggerations, but lots of tales and histories and mythologies, I imagine. Hmm. Let's see. I might learn some Tibetan here. There's Buddhism, a very short introduction. That might be good. Hmm. Masters of Enlightenment. That's about the Siddhas. Hmm. There's some books here. And of course, the book I was looking at is there. Oh, Vajrasattva meditation practice. You to do that. Six Yogas of Naropa. Hmm. Let's see if I got anything good here. The Manual of Standard Tibetan. And this is a Tibetan book too. Tibetan language book. There's Kala Chakra, Tanka painting, mm, Sanskrit. Mm, let's see. Hmm. Tibetan Book of Great Liberation and the Book of the Dead, the Garden of Mahamudra and the Great Paths of Awakening, Tantric Techniques by Jeffrey Hopkins, Kala Chakra. Hmm. There's the Heart Sutra, You Forever by Lobsang Rampa, Colloquial Tibetan, Tibetan English Dictionary. So we got ourselves. Here's a Tibetan Book of the Dead. Hmm. We got work to do. Oh, liberation in the palm of your hand. That's Lamrim. I should be studying that. I got so much to study.